Hi everyone and welcome to this video which is part of the National Apprenticeship Week. The purpose of this video is to talk about overcoming the barriers that you may have with your apprenticeship and coming out the other side to complete your apprenticeship. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Gary Storer. I'm part of the organisation staff development team in the University of Sunderland. And my responsibility is to support staff going through apprenticeships, and me and my team go through that. We have also Hattie Blenkinthop on the call. Do you want to introduce yourself, Hattie?
Hi, I'm Hattie and I'm the Customer Services Team Leader for the University Library Services.
Thank you. And just to go on, you did an apprenticeship recently. What apprenticeship did you do? And can you just give us a bit of a background of what was in the apprenticeship and how it was studied?
I did the Level 3 Team Leader Supervisor Apprenticeship, and that also alongside it completed a CMI diploma. And the content of the apprenticeship was all focused on first line management, project management, covering the sorts of topics that you might come across day to day
Yeah,
as a people manager or as a project manager.
brilliant. And just because it's a very important thing of this discussion, is when did you start this apprenticeship, and what did you go on site to study the apprenticeship?
I started, I think it was the end of 2019, and we had a few sessions in person to start. And as everyone will know,
Mhm.
a few months later, in 2020, the pandemic began,
Yeah,
and so we had to pivot from in-person sessions to everything being online.
yeah. So that all happened on March 2020. It was the back end of March, and there was a lockdown involved. And just to talk about some of the content, I don't know the curriculum was talking about you going out on company visits. Now, obviously, that couldn't happen because of the pandemic. But to me, just the pandemic, when the pandemic, it probably affected your studies, and I would say three ways. First of all, the time needed to study probably extended. Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, what's your thoughts about that? And did you find it a barrier over the long term, or were you okay with time wise?
It was sometimes quite difficult, obviously, when you're planning for certain deadlines, and things might have to be moved beyond your control, or they're outside of your control. But also sometimes deadlines had to be moved just because, um, as an apprentice, I couldn't get to the point that I needed to be at for a certain date, just due to
Yeah.
the impact that the pandemic and lockdowns had had. Obviously, it increased workload
Yeah.
in my day job, which obviously impacted the
Yeah.
amount of time I had to focus on the apprenticeship.
Yeah, and as well, probably the end date of your apprenticeship extended as well. Did you find that was sort of a problem as well?
It wasn't too bad right at the end. I think because at that point things had
Yeah.
sort of fallen into place. But it was
Yeah.
just it was difficult at times. So it's when you sort of plan for a certain time and then things change, but you just have to be quite adaptable and flexible, really.
Yeah, I do know because I worked with you, Court, that you had a peer group set up at the time. Did you find that useful for you? Because obviously we were in lockdown, you weren't seeing each other. Did you find having a peer group using WhatsApp and whatever other technologies, was it useful?
Yeah, it was really useful and really helpful to have a supportive group around you when you were doing this apprenticeship. So the other apprentices, who were all going through the same thing, all going through having to deal with shifting responsibilities through the pandemic and how they delivered
Mhm.
their roles. So being able to speak to people who were not only just going through everything that everyone else was with the
Yeah.
pandemic, but also being able to speak to people who were trying to balance the apprenticeship and their day-to-day work was really helpful.
Yeah, and just because obviously delivery moved online as well, just thinking about, was there any sort of maybe, obviously you couldn't go on the company visits because that was just physically impossible. What about the sort of sort of quality of the learning? Did you find it was it deteriorated or anything like that?
I think the delivery from our tutors was still great. We were lucky to have a really supportive and adaptable tutor as well. So
Mhm.
all of our learning sessions moved online, and they were through using Google tools, which
Yeah,
did require a little bit of learning there because it was different to what we
yeah,
use at Sunderland with Microsoft. Um, but the tutor was really good, and she delivered everything to the best of her
yeah,
ability. But obviously, she'd had to very quickly switch her content from a classroom in-person
yeah,
delivery to online. And I think we just encountered the same limitations that um, all of our students have encountered
yeah,
with changing to online delivery versus being in a room face to face.
yeah,
There are some bits that you miss out on. There's some strengths to the online delivery. It obviously meant that we could perhaps have more time because we had no commute.
yeah. It's
Obviously,
true.
we couldn't commute anywhere. Um, um, so it was good in some ways that it was more flexible. You could work it around work perhaps more easily than being sort of on campus with the service provider. But it did have a few limitations
Yeah,
when not being able to discuss things in the same way as
yeah,
when you're just sitting together in a
yeah.
classroom.
Yeah, you just kind of have that like sort of quick chat across the
Yeah,
table. Yeah,
it feels a lot more formal when you're doing it through something like Zoom or Google
yeah,
or Teams,
yeah,
um, rather than when you're just sitting next to each other. You might do bits of practical work together. You can't have the same sort of informal discussions that you
yeah.
can when you're together.
Yeah, just thinking about that, just thinking about your time and people using you halfway through one of your learning and someone tries to give you a call on Teams. Um, did you find you needed a different discipline during that period as well? Do you feel you needed to have, I'm going to block time out calendars? Did you feel you needed to do that?
Yeah, definitely. Not going onto campus with the service provider and doing everything online did mean that sometimes the lines were blurred with colleagues, with perhaps if you were available or not. I think everyone's probably experienced it
Hmm.
um, with working online and using
Yeah.
something like Teams. It's brilliant because you can be in touch with people so
Mhm.
easily, but then it's sometimes hard to set a boundary with when you are or you aren't
Yeah,
available. So I did have to be quite careful with managing my diary and carving out dedicated time, especially when it came to um, making sure that I was hitting my off the job
yeah,
training hours, um, the ones that were separate to the formal learning
yeah.
that we had timetabled.
Yeah, I think the discipline needed to do that, but obviously workloads increased as well. So the demands were instant more, and the demand of using Teams, I think it was more instantaneous as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So just to talk about yourself through that period, obviously everyone went through a lot of anxiety at that point, and increased workload, and how do we work in this new environment? Uh, how did you feel yourself in actually doing the apprenticeship? Did you have any anxieties, or did you have any motivational problems doing it?
I think at times it could feel a little bit overwhelming,
Hmm.
just because, like you said, like workloads had increased due to the pandemic, and at some points it sometimes felt like you were sort of trying to keep all the plates spinning, or like
Yeah,
you're just keeping your head over above water. But I think having the support of the other apprentices who were doing the apprenticeship with me, and having sort of supportive colleagues and a really supportive line manager really did help. And I think although it was not a great time for everyone through the pandemic, the fact that we were all going through that together as well
yeah,
helped because you had other people who could understand what you were going through as
yeah.
well.
That's good. I'm really good. I think the importance of a peer group for anyone doing an apprenticeship or any learning is really beneficial, because you are actually going through all of the same things. Now, yeah, you've managed to overcome there. You did all of your learning, and I don't want to dwell too much on it. Two other incidents happened after that. Was the learning all finished, and you, as an apprentice, you go through something called an endpoint assessment. And at the time where you're going to go the endpoint assessment, unfortunately, there was a change of tutor. Um, so that moved the time back, and then also the time back was going to be October 2021. And if anyone can cast their memories back in the university at October 2021, we were unfortunately a victim of a cyber attack. And the unfortunate timing for yourselves was it was the actual week for us to get all the information together for the EPA was the week of the cyber attack. So just as a couple of things, what the support that myself and actually our team can provide on that, I was trying to help facilitate when and got the group together to when we can actually do things. And at the time of the cyber attack, there was a bit of a communication, like because all the teams went down and everything. So I actually went round and physically tried to get all the people. But one thing that I remember you did, Hattie, which was really good, was you actually used the service providers' email account and everything like that to actually communicate with them. Uh, Not everyone does that. Some people use their own university email accounts. And at that time of the cyber attack, I think you were on. I went to see you, and you already done everything you needed to do to communicate with them. So I think that is an excellent bit of advice. I don't know about,
Yeah.
did you use this account and all the way through your studies?
Yeah, I used it and I set up like redirects on it and things as well.
Yeah.
Because it's you're provided with it, so it makes sense
Yeah.
to make use of it, and it also helps compartmentalize things a little bit to your apprenticeship versus your work as well.
Yeah. It's very good bit of advice because not everyone does that. And in the case of the cyber attack, it was the actual method of communication you could use because they couldn't make contact via the university systems or Teams or anything at that point. But because of all this extension in time, I think one word that came to my mind for you and the full cohort was resilience. Do you think you needed that to get through all of this time period?
Yeah, definitely. I think doing an apprenticeship without any of these external factors affecting it, you need a level of resilience. But I think it needed it even more through, like you said, like through the pandemic, and then coming out of that, and then the cyber attack and the change of tutor. And you just have to be really adaptable and ready to roll with any change that might come along. And with that, you do need quite a bit of personal resilience as well.
And I would think just a bit of dedication to make it to the end, because the week of the cyber attack, for example, that must have been with there, and then
Yeah.
yeah. So I think the dedication that you all provided in your court to actually make it to the end as well was very good. Anyway, you did make it to the end, so congratulations. I know that
Thank you.
it was a long haul after all of them things happened. So just to mention, after all of these things that happened and all of the time that it took and all of the effort, and was it worth it?
Definitely, yes. It was, like you said, it was a long process, longer than normal. It was difficult at times, but I would definitely do the apprenticeship again, because I found it really valuable. It was nice to be able to formalize and contextualize what I do and map against the apprenticeship standards, all the things that
Mhm.
you sometimes take for granted in your
Yeah,
role that you just do as part of your normal sort of day-to-day work, and actually look at how those align with the standard, and also how much you do every day.
yeah,
I think it was really beneficial. So I would definitely do it all again, hopefully
excellent.
without a cyber attack at the end.
Or another global pandemic.
Yeah,
Good. Right, thank you for that. Just for me to sum up there, I think Hattie has done. She's told us a few sort of methods she used to try to manage a timetable better. But I think the peer group support and support from your colleagues also helped you actually get through this. And I would certainly advise the final thing that we talked about there was with the service provider, use their provision, because when the cyber attack happened, it would have been very difficult to communicate with the group. So I'd like to sum up on that. I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and I'd certainly like to thank Hattie, because I know she's been very busy at the moment. So thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.